Lipstick on a Pig is a worker placement game that's intended to model U.S. national level politics. At the beginning of the game, I try and introduce the fact that this is taking place on the national stage, and we do have a voice by voting and taking part in government at a local level before it gets here, but this game is set where that ship has kind of sailed. Each of the players is representing a private, kind of secret special interest group that has some sort of a hidden agenda, which is going to determine in-game scoring at the end of the game. So while there's a lot of things happening, all the cards that you might play are going to be placed into your pocket area, which I'll cover shortly, and they have motivations on them. And so the idea is that you may be motivated beyond what seems to be on the surface happening to really push forward an agenda that's a little bit secret. And these are powerful interest groups that maybe really exist. One example of an end-game scoring condition is here. Each of the players get to get 3 choices, and they get to choose one of these from the deck, and then they hide it for the rest of the game. At the end of the game, they'll score it. This is the hidden agenda of righteous empire, that only through force will equality be truly guaranteed. And you will score, of the 6 tags, you're going to score a point for each domination motivation tag and each equality motivation tag that you've played throughout the game. And it's something difficult to keep your eye on as you play, and we'll go through the mechanics of where you place your workers, which are called agents. We're going to pick it up in the second turn, or maybe a third term where my pocket is pretty close to being filled out, and we'll focus on the blue player in this example. So in this example here, you see the first, you see the layout, which is that you can keep active and shown 3 accomplishment and legislature cards. And I have kept this ability active in my area. It's got a technology tag. It also has this effect that I gain 2 funds for each equality tag that I place in pocket. It's not really that powerful. So let's say that I kept it on here on this accomplishment, where I pay 2 less whenever I pay for power. Power is tracked around the perimeter of the board here, and it's going to be, you can accumulate it throughout the game. But the big driver for power is end game scoring based on the tags that align to your hidden agenda. So this player has a hidden agenda, but it's hidden. It's face down below the next part of their pocket, which is that they can play 2 politicians as running mates in order to compete to gain income through the election process while they campaign and lobby, and also that they may have a chance at becoming the president. In this case, JFK is in his 2nd term as president. So when we get to the end of the round, when all of the agents have been placed, no one has anybody else to put down, then everyone is going to score something based on whatever it is about the American populace that makes them powerful. And JFK can score either red or blue, and then for each accomplishment, he's going to score 2 points. And I've got 1 accomplishment as shown in pocket, so I'm going to get 2 points for that. And then in this case, we have blue rating 2, so he would score altogether. He would score 4 points, not a lot. You would put those funds tokens on him. I'd also score Dr. Plum, who scores only if we're in blue. He scores the humanity rating, and then he scores 3 points if this dial is set between a focus on national defense and a focus on the betterment of national education policies. So, but right now it's in defense, so he wouldn't score that. And then to the far right, you have these cards that are face down. Those face down cards come from any story that you published in the media area. And we'll go over how you get those onto the board in a round. After the round, there's an election, and those will be scored. Because he's in his 2nd term, though, I will be the president, and I get the special ability of playing in the White House. He's going, when we get to running the campaign, he's going to be flipped over. He won't score anything for his running score, and he won't be able to be president. So I'm going to need to go to the caucus to buy new presidents and then place them on top, just as you would if you run out of your 3 slots capacity in legislature accomplishments. It's still worth accumulating those cards, even if they're not shown, even if the president is retired, because at the end of the game, we're going to show all the media cards and all the rest of the cards that have been accumulated in my pocket, and then I'm going to show my hidden agenda card and score points counted around the power track for each one of those tags. So there's this meta game going on that's sort of the point of this, that there's more happening behind the scenes than is obvious on the surface of American national politics. So we'll go through each of the areas and where you can place your agents. Everyone's going to start with 5, and they can grow their following up to 10. So they have 5 additional tokens here in inactive agents in caucus. So the first we'll cover the ratings, which reflects the leanings of the American public. Here we have Republican versus Democratic polls, and then how seriously that rating is tilted, I guess. It goes up to 7, so if anything would push it beyond 7, it just stays at 7. You can easily change where this rating is by placing an agent face up, standing up in one of these slots. If blue were to place one of their agents here, it would move the dial here a little bit more toward red, and it never hits 0. And there's a reason why you might place a second one here. If you do, it's going to again, if it's standing up, it's going to immediately move that dial. So now we're not very politically motivated, but but the polls are coming back, and the Electoral College estimates are coming back that we're a little bit more Republican than we are Democrat. And now placing 2 here there's a second reason you might want to do that. When we get after the election, when we get to cleaning up all the agents from the board, if I've got 2 here, then I'm able to take an extra agent as an active agent for me for placement later. Now, let's say that red also, the red player here, also liked that they were also scoring the Republican rating, and so they also wanted it to be red. They can still place here, and this represents campaigning within, in this case, the Democratic Party or a related party, but in such a way that you deteriorate the power of unity of the Democratic Party's voice. This might be support of the Green Party or something, whereas on the other side you might have the Tea Party or super right-wing extremists or something like that. That you can deteriorate the power of a party while still campaigning and still take advantage of that campaigning growing your number of agents by placing them face down. If you place them face down, when you do that, it doesn't move the dial. You're deteriorating that power of unity for that party. So that's how you get more agents, and why you might place them standing up or resting as sleeper agents. Next, you have the market research area. At any point in time, you can place a meeple in here and you draw a card. Now, cards, you don't always get what you want with cards. Inside that deck, you're going to find some accomplishment cards placed here, some legislature cards placed here, and some media machine cards media cards get placed in the media machine here on its gears. But if you pull cards that you don't really like, have no fear, because you can also use them to pay costs, and you have different costs on the board, and we'll go over the costs of each of these areas. But if you don't have the funds, as this player has an accumulated, looks like 14 funds, then you can still play in areas that require you to pay a cost by paying cards, and cards are worth 5 apiece. But what that represents is that you are contributing to other secret private interest groups that aren't active on the national stage yet, but they really want to be, and they're ever eager to take part in this fight. So you can give them abilities they wouldn't otherwise be privy to, and they'll pay you for it. So you can dump your cards in order to pay costs at 5 apiece. Now you can't make change from those, and the reason is that giving political power like that is illegal, and so it has to be done indirectly. And so the story that tells is that you can't just directly get your 5 funds, rather they're contributing by paying for something else, and so it's an indirect trade. So you can always get more cards, and at the beginning of every round, you're going to always start with 5. If for some reason you have more than 5 because you did a lot of market research actions, you can just keep all your cards. You never have to draw down to 5, and you can always use them as money. So one of the examples, we'll say red, it wants to play an accomplishment cards, and those cost either 15 or 20. And if you're playing you notice here I've got a blocker here, and that's present on many different areas. That's in order to equalize gameplay in a 2-player game like this one. But there are 2 accomplishment slots that are open. This one costs you 15, and this one costs you 20, and that's really a lot of funds or a lot of cards from your hand. But they're incontestable. You could play, for instance, red could play this accomplishment, which is to glorify civil disobedience and protest. And if they play here, they're going to pay their 15, and they might pay that with 3 cards from their hand, or with these funds markers if they have enough, or a combination of both. And then as soon as it goes down into accomplishments, that's going to work for them. So if they end up playing something that allows them to buy power counted around the edge of the track here, then they're going to pay 2 less for each one that they do. And those can really stack and become quite powerful. The next person to play would have to play, it could be them or it could be a different player. They're going to have to pay 20, so it could be 4 cards or 3 cards and 5 funds if they've got it. But those are powerful, immediately work for you. And after the election, after the end of the round when election takes place, you're going to grab those and you're going to place them into pocket. And you've got 3 slots. So if it was a blue player placing that into pocket, they could place right here, and they could decide if they keep that agent there so that the ability is active, or if they pick them up and decide later if they want to reactivate that during one of their placements. Each turn, everyone can place 1 or 2 of their agents if they have available agents. And so later, if they knew they weren't going to buy power for a while, they could claim that into their pocket, but like I have with this legislature card, maybe not have a person on it. And then later, if they thought, okay, I'm about to buy some power, so I want that to be useful, my first placement could be, put it on legislature. My second one could be buying power, which is usually a media card. The next area, which is only applicable to this player because they have the president, even though he's in his second term, has 3 different options, and they're able to play in one of the 3, not more than one. The first one doesn't really make sense for him because it's going to add 5 points to their running score for their second term now. That should be their first term, but it's going to add points, and you would just put those from the bank. You'd put 5 more points here. Now he's also going to, at the end of the round, once everyone's out of agents, he's also going to score either red or blue, and then his accomplishment. So I might want to get another accomplishment there, so he's more powerful. That'll get added, and he'll have a very good shot at winning the election. And actually, that needs to be changed to first term. He'd have to be in his first term for an incumbent campaign to make any sense, because that guy's in his second term. He's going to be retired. So we won't do that, but I have some other options, especially in a second term. What I might want to do is an inauguration speech, which is really basically your private interest writing the president's inauguration speech. And when you play there, that's your one option in the White House there. If you decide to play that, and you would get 1 power immediately. And that could be powerful because that's what wins you the game. The other option, and we'll get to it'll be a segue into Congress, is that you can play at one point toward the end of your turn usually, you can play abusing your veto rights. And that wipes out any bill and all the amendments that might be in Congress. Those agents go back to the players that played them, and they can place them somewhere else, even back into Congress to start a new bill. So let's cover bills. Bills are legislature cards in the Congress area are started. There's legislature cards played all over. The first one is special. That is the actual bill. So right now there's a bill in Congress. We'll say red plays this, and that's free. So they play this legislature, and it is an equality tag, and it's decriminalizing marijuana. It's going to require that the polls rating be over 4, either red or blue. So if they play that card, they're going to have to work to get this. Probably over here would be easier than getting it over here, but they got to do something to get that over 4. So 5, 6, or 7 on either side would work, but people have to care. One of the options, another option in this area is, instead of paying so we'll go for amendments, is to put down an amendment. So let's say the blue player wants to put a rider into the bill to decriminalize marijuana, and that's to federally criminalize late-term abortion. So, and you see this in practice where you have a lot of things where, in that bills being passed, laws included in legislature that have nothing to do with, one another. It's totally off topic. And in order to do that, you have to lobby. So you have to pay, the blue player in this case would have to pay 5 in order to attach that to the bill. Now the bill is one of the reasons the bill is special, and that's as soon as it goes down for that round, it works for the player who started the bill. So they can gain 2 funds whenever they place an agent to campaign, which is these campaigners in this area. So if they did that first and then they placed here and here, then they would end up with an extra 4 funds. Whereas the amendments don't take place until they're actually placed into pocket. So the blue player is going to play here, and that's going to cost them 5. So here they're going to pay their 5 for that because they don't want to dump a card for that because they have the funds to use. Now, part of the bill to decriminalize marijuana is federally criminalizing late-term abortion. Those are totally unrelated things, but now the red and blue players are going to have to work together to somehow push the dial, probably easiest way this way, to push it up to 5, 6, or 7 so that it meets the requirements of that bill. If that bill doesn't pass after the election, the new president is going to check the requirements, and if it doesn't pass, all the bill and all the amendments are just discarded, and all of the agents go back to their respective sources. So here you have partnership over party lines. Even though it's a competitive game, everybody wants to get their legislature passed, and so you end up supporting the requirements of a bill that just because you want your amendments to get through with it, which I think is a good model maybe for a lot of U.S. national politics. The next areas, and we'll get into here. These don't reference it. Well, the requirements don't matter on this amendment, but one thing it mentions is fear or humanity above 5, and those are counted here on these 2 tracks. Also meant to reflect the U.S. national sentiment, or at least the majority U.S. national sentiment. And they start at 5, and they'll keep on getting reset to 5. First you've got the humanity rating, and that can be increased to the point that we hit altruism, in which case it drops back down to 5, and this dial in the middle has to change its focus, has to be on an education focus instead of a defense focus. So if that were to happen, then we'd flip this over to an education focus, which is referenced by politicians, cards in the media, and some of your accomplishments. So you might need to manipulate the public so that they care about education, and that would be one way to do it, is to get humanity all the way up to altruism. Now, if the humanity track, if the humanity track gets all the way down to capitalism, then the polls have to be on the red side. If they're not, then they flip. So if this was, say, on rating 4 blue, and we got all the way down to capitalism, it would go back up to 5, following the little arrow, and it would have to flip to that side. So then you have this these polarized polls, I guess, where which is also reflective of most of our democratic history, where we flip back and forth. There's not a lot of times I don't think there's any times where you have 3 terms Democratic all in a row. Same thing with the Republicans. Eventually people want something different, and I've extrapolated that has something to do with their sense of humanity and their sense of fear. So similarly but different to humanity, if this fear rating goes all the way up to panic, goes back down to 5, and this would be we would get into a defensive focus. So we're so panicked that we care about more about national defense than education. And then if this goes all the way down to apathy, which you might not be able to see, but apathy is the lowest rating, then it goes back up to 5. And then if the polls are not blue, they switch to the blue side, so that would flip it over here. That's kind of how those ratings work, and they were referenced quite a bit in the media machine. Now, media cards are free to play if you're playing a story into the media. So let's find one here that I might want to do. Let's say red has the polls rating is not high enough. Actually, I don't think there's anything they could really do about that. So they would have probably ideally not played that bill. But here's one. You could do the cabinet cleaning, which is the big story in the media, firing everybody, and which is happening right now, actually. And then if you play here, let's say the red player has played here, they're going to you start these out in clockwise order: first slot, second, third, and fourth on each of these gears, and only 2 of them are open in a 2-player game. They're going to place their person face down, and it has an effect. You decrease the fear rating, and this first side you're going to decrease the fear rating by 1. Later, they or a different player, if they wanted fear to go down, has a couple of options here. They can either spin a story in the next slot, which will activate its next side, which is by another 1. And then maybe later the red player spins it again, and here it's going to go by another 2. So it's going to hit apathy. We're going to swing back up to 5. The fear rating is going to go back up to 5, and this is already blue, so it's not going to have any effect. Or at any point in time on one of those slots, another player could play a wholly different card, and that might do something like here, where you're going to use that first slide. You're going to bury the story that you've put into and paid for in the media of the cabinet cleaning that's decreasing our fear rating. Instead, the blue player is going to play over here with a new campaign, and they're going to, the effect is that no one can play into certain areas, and that's cumulative. So, and this is the 4th slot, so no one can play into special projects for the rest of the round. And that could be, the next slot here is White House, and so if you could get that out and the player controlling the president hadn't played the White House, they wouldn't be able to unless they could do something about that gear in the media. At any point in time, you don't have to complete those. At any point in time, somebody else could play a whole different story over here, and that would have a different effect. This one is you decrease the humanity rating, and this first rank is by 1. So you decrease the humanity rating by 1, and then you can either spin that story or play another story in the next slot. Now, this is an interesting placement over here because special projects can't be played, and you can't bury that story because all 4 kind of spokes, I guess, of the gear are filled up. So there's timing in there. So if the blue player thought that red would want to maybe play another accomplishment, they would place there in the 4th slot, because now nothing can be done about that. That really is closed. You can't bury that or anything later because all 4 of those spokes are exhausted. In the last area, we already talked a little bit about this holding pin for your inactive agents that you're going to be claiming here at the end of the election. You also have 2 options here. First, you have a smear campaign, which is free to play. And if you play a smear campaign, let's say the blue player really thinks red wants Oprah, who scores blue, and that's now at a rating of 4, and their own accomplishments. And if they've got 1 accomplishment, it's accomplishments times 5. So be 9. Her running score would be 9, and I think she could win. I don't want them to get that. So I'm going to do a smear campaign against Oprah, and she's removed from the game forever and ever. And then the other option is to buy a politician. And so you can buy a new politician, and let's say that I bought Reagan over here, and whatever it is he costs, I pay for that with a combination of cards and my available funds. I would, after the election, I would place Oprah over one of these, and that's going to be a good idea for JFK because he's already played out. Before we get to the vote, he's going to retire, and then we're going to choose a new president, so he's not going to score anything for me. He'll go face down, and at the very end of the game, I'll score equality and government tags if my hidden agenda is in line with either and/or equality or government motivations. So I want to get more politicians. Blue definitely does because they've got JFK is going to be retired, and they're only going to have 1 politician with no running mate. So they really might want to do that, and they pay that right away. And then the last idea is that we run an election. So everyone would count up what their current, he would be first retired, JFK is retired, and this is kind of the token is up for grabs. Then I'd score Dr. Plum, and Dr. Plum is going to score 4 points for blue. I don't know if you could see it. 4 points for blue. The humanity rating right now is 4, which is 8, and then it's not in education, it's in defense focus. So he's only going to score 8, and I would take 8 little tokens, I would place him on them, and every politician for every player is going to do that. We determine who had the highest running score. They're going to get the first term presidency, and then that player is going to control the president, be able to use the White House, and so on and so forth. At the very end of the game, your money is worth nothing, but all of the cards that you have in pocket can be checked. You're going to have your hidden agenda, which I'll get to shortly, and then all of these, all of your politician cards, and, I didn't get to the point in cleanup. Kind of skipped a part, but in these cards would be claimed. Red's going to get the accomplishment and choose to keep that or not. We are going to get these as long as the polls rating is over 4. In this case, it's at 4, but it's not over 4. So these legislature cards just get discarded, and the agents go back to their respective owners. And then you score your media cards. The times that the agents that you used to spin other people's stories aren't going to give you anything special. They had an effect during the game, but for any story that was yours, as is the case here, you'll place that face down in your pocket, and then at the end of the game, you'd score that. So let's look at what I score and how I did if this was the end of the game, how I did as far as my motivation tag. So I have the motivation that everyone should be treated equally and contribute to the community, and this is in the vein of communism. Let's see how many, and I'm going to score workforce twice, you see at the bottom. So let's see how many workforce tags I have. None. Boy, I didn't do really well. Actually, he ended up with no workforce tags, so this wasn't a very well-played game. I'm not going to score any power, and we're tied right now, so I'm betting that Red's going to win. So those are all the mechanics of the worker placement game. There's a lot of different areas, and they work different ways, but the fact we can get through it in 10 minutes, I think, is heartening. Also, American politics, U.S. national politics is complicated. So the fact that you've got a lot of different motivations to work together almost against your will or against the will of your hidden agenda, and that you've got this other layer that you have that hidden agenda and what's really happening on the national stage, the slandering of beloved celebrity, for instance, is going to score domination. What that has to do with anything, who knows? And I think the story we're trying to tell is that there's so much more going on in this complex political environment than meets the eye, and you score that at the end of the game to reflect that.